Before Cesar Chavez was born in 1927, there was a negative mindset to many minorities in America. During the 1920s, there were some reform movements that changed America for the better. While life was good for many and as technology developed, farms became more and more commercialized. Farmers were a group that were thought negatively of, but they also thought negatively towards others. They discriminated against many of their workers who happened to be migrants. They paid them far less than the minimum wage, exposing them to dangerous working conditions and requiring extra hours to be worked. Cesar was a person who changed much of that as he fought with the migrant farm laborers for civil rights. In 1927, Cesar Chavez was born near Yuma, Arizona, and he would change rights for many migrant laborers in farms across the country, as well as fight for civil rights for Mexican Americans. His parents were immigrants from Mexico, but Cesar was an American citizen. During the Great Depression, Chavez, along with many others, had to have their house foreclosed and decided to move to California, where Chavez worked on the field full-time and dropped out of school after 8th grade. In 1946, he joined the Navy for 2 years in a segregated unit. Returning home after working for a couple more years, he began to work at the CSO, or Community Service Organization Group, in 1952. He tried to convince Mexican Americans to register to vote. As he continued to work for CSO, he rose through the business to become the national director, but he quit in 1962 as many members refused to support other, more active movements. He began the NFWA, or National Farm Workers Association, along with Dolores Huerta in 1962, and he began to direct and organize strikes and unions. His most notable strike was the Delano Grape strike, in which it lasted from 1965 to 1970 due to the grape growers who were exploiting many migrant laborers. The workers were getting paid far less than minimum wage and being exposed to pesticides as well as not being able to unionize. The Delano Grape strike was successful for the migrant laborers due to boycotts, marches, hunger strikes, community organizing, and nonviolent resistance, which was inspired by the famous peace leaders Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. The main march ranged about 340 miles from Delano to Sacramento, where protests occurred and the migrant workers and their supporters demanded their opinion be heard and considered. Chavez also went on a hunger strike in protest to the use of pesticides and how they negatively affect laborers' health. The grape strike was eventually recognized by the growers, who were losing too much money due to the boycotts. They gave the migrant workers extra pay, allowed them to unionize, and gave them health protection. During the grape strike, the NFWA and the AWOC, Agricultural Working Committee, merged together to create the UFW, the United Farm Workers of America. The movements created by these groups recognized by the Californian government, which was willing to help the unions and strike achieve their goals for migrant workers. In 1972, Chavez again went on a hunger strike, along with others, to protest Arizona laws of not allowing migrant laborers to unionize. The strike unfortunately failed to get as much recognition as the one that happened during the Delano Grape strike. Efforts slowed down in the 80s as support declined, contracts lapsed, and power in government changed. Chavez died peacefully in his sleep in 1993. The following year, Bill Clinton bestowed upon him the Presidential Freedom Award. Although Chavez has died, his legacy continues on as Barack Obama used him and his saying, "Si se puede," or "Yes we can," in his presidential campaign in 2012. His work influenced many farmers, politicians, normal people, and other peacefully protesting movements, as he achieved his goals which positively impact a minority within the United States. He was, and still is, seen as a folk hero who did many great things and is recognized across the country for his lasting work for the discriminated group of laborers across the country.